to the organization engagement session where we'll be talking about building a culture inside and out. My name is Katie Dalton and I am a dance marathon manager in the Central area, and I'm super excited to get to talk with you all today about leadership, culture, and collaboration. So before we get started, I wanted to go over some of the objectives and things that I hope you will learn from the presentation today. First, we're going to discuss what it means to be a servant leader and understand the inverted triangle concept. Then we will dive into why culture is important and some of the benefits that it can bring to your organization. After that, we're going to think outside the box and walk through a unique situation and understand how leadership plays a huge role in success. We're also going to go over our CMN Hospital's cultural beliefs and end with a workshop where you will have the chance to think of your own program's cultural beliefs. So before we can understand how to effectively change or amplify our organization's culture, we first need to understand what it means to be a servant leader. Servant leadership is a philosophy where serving is the main goal. It sounds self-explanatory, but it's often difficult for people to take into action. Most humans by nature like to receive praise and accolades, and the servant leadership mentality really puts the needs of others first and inverts the norm of leaders getting all the glory and instead gives it to others. Another thing to note is that servant leadership is a verb, not a noun. Similarly to the well-known phrase, actions speak louder than words, servant leadership is based on actions of putting people first instead of just saying that you're going to. I'm sure we can all think of leaders we've worked with in our past, whether it's through internships, jobs, dance marathon, or teams that we've worked with that have displayed true servant leadership by building up the people on their team. And then we've also probably worked with others who maybe have taken the spotlight and operated in a more self-serving way. So if you truly want to live out the values of being a servant leader, you have to understand the concept of the inverted triangle. In the traditional hierarchy view that we are pretty familiar with usually, the leaders of the company or organization are at the top, and then everyone else follows beneath them. This view paints this picture that everyone is meant to help serve the leader and work to fulfill their goals and initiatives. However, in the inverted model, the leaders are seen at the bottom. Sure, they still may have that higher rank or title in the organization, but their purpose is to serve the people and help them succeed. And it really does take a true leader, often one who practices humility and selflessness, to really lead with that servant view. So when we apply this to dance marathon, it may look something like this. Our traditional view with exec members at the top of the organization, then committees, captains, participants following beneath them on this org chart. But if we were to invert this view and change it to servant leadership, the perspective would be a little different. The participants would be at the top and the captains would be there to support them. And then the committees would support the captains and the exec members would support the captains, the committees, and the participants, and really the whole organization. So like I said, this view of servant leadership is difficult. I think we all want to support our organizations in this way, but when you as an exec member are spending countless hours and energy and resources into planning your event all year, and some participants we know show up the day of the event, we know it's easy to want to seek the praise and recognition for your hard work versus someone who maybe didn't work quite as hard. And don't get me wrong, you all deserve that praise and recognition more than you know. But just for a moment, put yourself in the shoes of a new participant who is attending their first ever dance marathon. They're excited to meet the families, they're excited to fundraise and engage with the event. And when the event finally starts, the first thing they see is watching the exec team run down the middle of the gym onto the stage where they perform the morale dance on stage, and morale captains are in the crowd. Then the exec gets to introduce themselves and highlight the work that they've done all year and do shout outs for their team. I think those first year participants might be wondering, is this event put on for the kids and families, or is it put on for the leadership team? Now, again, all of this to say, you all are more than deserving of every accolade and praise and recognition for the commitment that you have for this organization and the families that you serve. But what we might suggest is to have a special ceremony just for leadership after the big event so that you can go through all of the highlights and accomplishments and give out awards, cheer each other on, and really recognize the incredible work you guys have done throughout the entire year. This way, the event is really focused on the experience. And if the participants and families feel like they are at the event where they are the VIPs, they're going to want to come back year over year. So as you can tell from my last example, just changing leadership styles to utilize servant leadership can alter the experience and culture of our events. So if we apply this on a bigger scale to every interaction and event throughout the year, we're going to start to see a huge culture shift in our organization. We're going to be known on campus not just as the organization that cares about kids, but we're going to be the organization who also cares about its members and the entire student population on our campus community. More relationships are going to get formed, trust is going to be established, and who knows, it might even just drastically affect our retention rates and our fundraising goals. So at this point, it might be pretty obvious as to why culture is important. And to create an inclusive and welcoming culture, all it really takes is a little bit more collaboration, leadership, and intentional effort to start seeing a shift in your organization. The benefits of a positive culture are monumental. In fact, when we look at studies of other companies, their organization culture and leadership drives employee happiness. They're saying that people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. And this is backed by statistics. The fact that 57% of people say they have left a job because of their leader is astounding. And roughly 90% of employees believe that positive workplace culture is important to business success. So it really is something that can change the course of your organization for the better. So what are some of these key elements of culture that make it positive for a team? I would say trust is one of the most important qualities. Without trust amongst your team, you can't have any of the other qualities, like a community or shared vision, which are also extremely crucial in developing a culture. Additionally, communication and collaboration allow people to work together. They allow them to grow together and, of course, have fun together. So now that we have learned a lot about what it means to be a servant leader, how to collaborate and create a positive culture of trust, I want to show you all an example of these things in action. I would like you all to imagine with me for just a minute that you are planning to climb a mountain. Well, not just any mountain, but Mount Everest, the world's tallest mountain. Climbing this mountain is a big feat, one that takes an entire team to complete. And honestly, without a team, climbing Mount Everest is an impossible task. So if you look at the group of climbers that boldly take on this excursion, we can learn a lot about leadership, collaboration, selflessness, trust, communication, and even failures that lead to eventual success. So when it comes down to it, we can make a lot of parallels between the teamwork and collaboration seen by those who climb Mount Everest and our own teams within Dance Marathon. Granted, we don't have to travel halfway across the world to Nepal, endure extremely cold temperatures that never rise above freezing, or spend 2 months on the side of a mountain, but you guys get the point. So when you take a look at what it truly takes to summit the world's tallest mountain, a lot of the things we observe aren't necessarily about how in shape the climber is, how many times they've attempted the summit, or even if they have the coolest looking gear. What we do learn is that the perseverance, character, team culture, and servant leadership is where that is going to take them the extra mile up to the summit. So there's 7 key learnings that I really want to go over today and highlight that we can observe from the climbers. They're relevant skills and characteristics of how we, as Dance Marathon leaders, should be approaching team situations in our day-to-day lives. Over the next few slides, we're going to take a look at these specific scenarios where they're going to address setting clear and audacious goals, prepping your gear, bonding at base camp, overcoming inevitable obstacles, the humbling action of taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, the realization that there is no room for selfishness on the mountain, and lastly, that at the end of the day, you win or you lose as a team. One of the first and most important things that happen when climbing Mount Everest is the acknowledgement and understanding of your team's goal. Everyone has the same goal, and that goal is to get your team to the summit and back down safely. It's clear, it's concise, and it's even audacious. This shared vision isn't just important, it's a matter of life and death. And the teams that summit Mount Everest prepare as much as possible so that the entire team can meet this goal together. So when looking to create a collaborative culture of trust amongst your Dance Marathon team, one of the first things you should do is establish a clear and audacious goal that everyone agrees on. So that way, when schedules get busy, things don't go as planned, or one team member really struggles, the rest of the team can remind them and motivate them of the goal. Once you have your goal set, it's up to each member of the team to roll up their sleeves and do whatever it takes to help the greater good of the group and the organization. Remember, if we are using the inverted triangle theory, the leadership team should be serving everyone else in the organization. And when we approach tasks with a servant leadership mentality, our culture begins to strengthen and the people around us start to trust us more. And in return, we're going to be able to move forward together. So after the team is on the same page with the goal of making it up the mountain and back down safely, you want to make sure that you have all the necessary gear that you need to be successful. Just like you wouldn't climb Mount Everest in flip-flops, you don't want your team to go into an event or meeting without the proper preparation. As a team leader, supporting your team and making sure that your team members have the proper tools to be successful is extremely important. If that one person on the team decided to summit Mount Everest in flip-flops, it would ruin the excursion for the whole team because they would have to stop and take care of that team member consistently. Similarly, if your team members aren't prepared on maybe best practices or recruitment strategies and therefore aren't able to register people for the event, then your whole team will suffer. Now the third lesson from our Everest climbers, this one's probably my favorite, and that is base camp bonding. Before leaving base camp and attempting any sort of climb, teams spend days and sometimes even weeks at base camp acclimating and bonding. Think about it. There are people from all over the world coming together to make up one expedition team. If you don't know the name of the person in front of you or behind you as you're inching along a rope while the ground beneath you is super icy, how are you supposed to trust them to know what to do and how to help you if something goes wrong on the mountain? So in order to start this bonding, a common activity done at base camp is actually a shared dinner where each member can cook delicacies of their home culture to share with the group. Now, this is no profit share at Chipotle, but I can imagine that this is a great time for the team to come together, share what they know, share where they're from, why they're summiting, what they're excited about, maybe even what they're nervous about. And slowly, they're starting to form that relationship of mutual trust and respect. By the end of their stay at base camp, their team is probably going to be much better suited to take on the mountain where the challenges and successes are almost always going to be certain. One expedition leader actually said, once the team ethic is established, you're ready for any situation that you may face. And you're ready because you have each other's backs. I'd like to think that the same can be said for our dance marathon teams. We spend a lot of time in retreats throughout the summer bonding with our team members, not just to get to know their likes and dislikes, but to create a team culture where the trust is strong and each individual truly has each other's back. And when this happens, that positive culture really shines through, and we can see more collaboration, communication, and community, and even fun. But like all expeditions, nothing is perfect. There will be obstacles. When climbing Everest, this obstacle is the least of their worries. Even though if you ask me, this one looks absolutely terrifying. But they have to think about weather and how it could change just in a matter of seconds, putting them in danger or ruining their window to make it to the summit. They have to account for altitude sickness, which can be debilitating. And of course, the lack of oxygen, which makes taking each step a dangerous challenge. But like all obstacles, you also have to realize that there are some things that are just out of your control. Whether the weather turns south on the mountain, or they could sit there and, they could sit there and they could complain about it raining, or they could do something about it because the complaining is not going to make things stop. And so instead, the climbers put on their rain gear and move forward. I think this is a key point that's extremely relevant to Dance Marathon and the culture of our organization in general. There are so many instances when things just don't go the way we had planned, whether that is our event getting canceled or us not hitting our fundraising goal, or we didn't get a sponsorship that we were counting on. What defines your team is how you respond to these obstacles. So have you ever created an environment where these challenges are seen as opportunities, or are you creating an environment where these challenges are debilitating, like altitude sickness on the side of the mountain? As a result of obstacles, we often learn the lesson of 2 steps forward and 1 step back. When you hear this phrase, it usually actually has a negative connotation. It alludes to the fact that you're failing, or at the very least, not succeeding as quickly as you would like. But on Everest, this is just the name of the game. It's made so that as a result, the climbers become stronger and more prepared for the real summit. What I mean by this is climbing Everest is a marathon, not a sprint. The excursion takes roughly 2 to 3 months in total. You start at 17,500 feet at base camp and slowly work your way up to camps 1, 2, 3, and 4 before ever attempting the summit. A team may travel up to base camp and spend anywhere from 1 day to a few days to a week, only to come back down to base camp. Or maybe they make it up to camp 2 and then back down to base camp, and then a week later try for camp 3. But I am here to tell you, Returning to base camp is not failing. In fact, it's preparing you for greatness. With each trip up to camps 1, 2, 3, and 4, the climbers are getting stronger. They're adjusting to the altitude, they're adjusting to the cold weather, they're tackling obstacles and challenges as a team and learning from them so that when it is time to summit, they're prepared. One expedition leader actually said, sometimes you have to go backwards in order to make real progress. And I think that's really true. Again, I think this is something that's really relevant to Dance Marathon. Sometimes going back to the basics, making sure your team is functioning at the highest capacity possible is going to provide more ROI for you than adding a new flashy fundraising event. And at the end of the day, sometimes failure is inevitable. And when you're reaching for big goals, you have to keep that in mind. But if you hit all of your goals, you're not reaching far enough. So how can we continue to motivate our team members to reach for big goals and provide support for them along the way, both personally and professionally? The sixth learning is that there is no room for selfishness on the mountain. Did you know that climbers actually travel halfway around the world, spend potentially years of training, and sometimes pay upwards of $75,000 just to summit Mount Everest? All that being said, there's a lot at stake when climbing this mountain, not just your ego. But that's why it's important to have an all-for-one, one-for-all culture on this mountain. Things can turn dangerous very quickly and turn into a can every person for themselves situation. But if that happened, no one would be safe. So there are so many displays of selflessness and sacrifice that take place during the climb. For example, take a climber that has a minor muscle injury that inhibits them from moving at their normal pace and makes them hesitate with each step on the ice. This climber, whether they realize it or not, can be dangerous for the team. If they fall and take down others on the way up or have to stop halfway, the team is going to have to stop with them and potentially miss their chance for the summit. It would be easy to say, well, I paid for this and I trained really hard and I'm going to stick with it no matter what. But a true servant leader on the team would take themselves out of the equation no matter the personal cost in order to better the team and the mission. And this is the type of thinking that we need to bring to our organizations, where we make decisions that are for the betterment of our organization as a whole and not decisions that are made for self-serving purposes. And lastly, you win or lose as a team. It was not the effort of one climber that got the group to the summit. It was the collective effort of the team. So no matter how hard you trained individually, without the right conditions and teamwork, the summit would have been out of reach. To make it to the top of Everest, you have to defy the odds. You have to do your part, but you also have to work as a team. You have to be a leader and a follower. You have to put the betterment of the team above your own agenda. Those who can say that they summited Everest are in the minority. With a 29% success rate, you know that the excursion is going to be difficult before you even step foot in Nepal. But each person that attempts the climb has the belief that they can do something great and that together they can make that greatness come to life. That is something that you all as leaders of Dance Marathon are doing for your programs. You're taking individual greatness, creating a culture for each individual to thrive, and then bringing people together for a common goal. And because of that, your success rate is much higher than 29%. But just remember, never stop reaching for these new heights. So now if we were in person, we would be going into a fun workshop where you would get to define what culture means to you and your Dance Marathon program. But since we aren't, I will leave you with a little bit of homework. At CMN, we have our own cultural beliefs. We call them our leader values. We not only have them on a poster and hung up around the office, but we live them each and every day. I can look at every one of my coworkers and see these beliefs really ingrained in the way that they work, the relationships that they have, and the things that they do. This leader belief card I'm going to attach in the session so that you guys can go back and reflect on them at the end. What I'm going to challenge you to do is take this back to your team, really create your own Dance Marathon cultural beliefs as a group and live them out. One thing that we do at our organization is we actually have a leader belief winner every month. So we nominate our fellow coworkers based on something that they've done that really highlights this belief. And then each month we get to nominate them and share what that coworker did that really displayed that leader belief, and then they get a prize. And this is something that I think you all could implement into your own programs. It would be a really great way to highlight the successes of your team members and really motivate people to live out your cultural beliefs every day. So lastly, I'm going to remind you to go on this metaphorical hike with your team. Show them what it means to be a servant leader and never ever lose sight of the summit. Thank you.